I've realized that I didn't really get to fully review Mufasa, so here's it. It's interesting. When Mufasa first hit theaters, it had a really disappointing opening weekend, making only around $35 million domestically. That's about half of what Sonic the Hedgehog 3 did in its debut. But despite that poor start, Disney decided to keep Mufasa in theaters without releasing it on streaming, which is pretty unusual these days. And that strategy seems to have paid off to some extent, because Mufasa eventually crawled its way to $653 million globally, 230 million of that domestic, and another 423 million from international markets. Here's the thing though, when you look at the evidence, it becomes pretty clear that Mufasa was a pure cash grab by Disney. This movie cost $200 million to make, first of all. And when you really examine it, there's no strong artistic justification for telling this particular story. It was purely made because the 2019 Lion King remake brought in a massive $1.6 billion. Disney saw an opportunity to further exploit people's nostalgia for this franchise and squeeze more money out of it. Plain and simple.
Here comes the money.
It's part of a clear pattern we've seen from them in recent years. This explains why Disney tried so hard to keep Mufasa exclusively in theaters for a long time without putting it on streaming. They were desperately trying to wring as much box office revenue out of it as they could. And keep in mind, some of Disney's other films in the past year did way better than Mufasa, like Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Moana 2. Each of those made over $1 billion worldwide. So in that context, Mufasa's $653 million isn't all that spectacular, especially for a movie carrying the Lion King brand name. And the whole movie is essentially a pointless origin story that nobody asked for. I mean, did we really need to see the backstory of how Pride Rock was formed? It's just unnecessary fluff. And then there's the way the story is told. Instead of feeling like an authentic, emotional tale, Mufasa is loaded with forced modern messaging. The female lions are portrayed as the strong, capable leaders, while the males are lazy and entitled. It comes across as hollow virtue signaling rather than genuine character development. Plus, the movie over-explains things about established characters that we already understood from the original Lion King. We don't need Mufasa's entire childhood spelled out for us. The original movie already gave us the essence of who he was. All these extra details feel tacked on and meaningless. Another issue with Mufasa is the voice casting. Look, Aaron Pierre is a solid actor, but he simply can't measure up to the iconic James Earl Jones as Mufasa. The same goes for Kelvin Harrison as Scar compared to Jeremy Irons in the original. These new performances lack the gravity and menace that made those characters so memorable. And then you have a truly great actor like Mads Mikkelsen just completely wasted as the leader of the Rogue Lions threatening the Pride. He's such a shallow, uninteresting villain and a poor use of Mikkelsen's talents. But perhaps the biggest problem with Mufasa, and indeed many of Disney's recent live-action remakes, is the photorealistic CGI used for the animal characters. While the animation itself is incredibly advanced from a technical perspective, it results in characters that are devoid of expression and visual charisma. These blank, vacant animal faces simply can't convey the complex emotions required for this kind of dramatic storytelling. There's a fundamental disconnect between the voice actors pouring their hearts into the vocal performances and the dead-eyed lions we see on screen. It constantly takes you out of the story. This is where Mufasa could have taken a page from the Sonic the Hedgehog movie adaptations. After the first Sonic design was revealed and fans revolted against how weird and off-putting it looked, the studio actually went back and completely redesigned Sonic to be more true to his video game appearance while still working in a real-world setting. Now, to really understand how Disney ended up making a movie like Mufasa, we need to look at the history that led up to this point. The trend of Disney remaking its animated classics actually started way back in 1994 with a live-action version of The Jungle Book. That movie is largely forgotten now, but it set the stage for what was to come. Fast forward to 2010, and we get Alice in Wonderland. While the reviews were mixed, it made a ton of money, becoming the second highest-grossing movie of the year. This success showed Disney the financial potential of live-action remakes. Around the same time, Disney was making big moves into CGI animation. They had already been working with Pixar on movies like Toy Story, but in 2006, they straight up bought Pixar and brought that CGI expertise fully in-house. This acquisition, along with the Alice in Wonderland money, really shifted Disney's direction. But as Disney leaned more and more into realism and live-action remakes, something began to happen. The studio that was once known for constantly pushing the boundaries of animation technology and storytelling started to become creatively stagnant. They went from being animation pioneers to essentially an assembly line, churning out one remake after another. Movies like Mulan in 2020 and The Little Mermaid in 2023 fell into the same trap as Mufasa, prioritizing nostalgia-driven brand recognition over making artistic statements or doing anything truly new and daring with these beloved characters and stories. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so Disney is playing it safe and cashing in on their old hits. What's the big deal? Well, the problem is Disney is such a massive force in the entertainment industry that their choices have far-reaching effects. When other studios see Disney making billions off mediocre remakes, they're going to want a piece of that pie too. It sets a bad precedent and encourages the whole industry to value easy nostalgia bait over inventive, original ideas. On a deeper level, Disney's focus on live action and photorealistic CGI is devaluing the art form of traditional hand-drawn animation that the studio built its legacy on. While there are still great animated movies being made, they're increasingly rare. The generation that grew up with The Lion King is now being sold a vastly inferior imitation, and young audiences may never get to appreciate the beauty of classic animation. So while Mufasa itself is just one lackluster movie, it's really a symbol of a larger issue in the world of animation and family entertainment. Disney's choices matter, and right now those choices are leading us down a disappointing path of endless remakes and wasted potential. Imagine if Disney had the guts to make a sequel to their Aladdin remake where Jasmine has to navigate being Sultan. Or picture a Mufasa movie that focuses on Simba's daughter Kiara trying to prove herself as the future queen. There are so many interesting directions these stories could go in. What Disney needs right now is a willingness to take creative risks instead of playing it safe with nostalgia. They have to relearn the innovative spirit that made their classic movies so special to begin with. If they want inspiration, they could look to Pixar movies like Coco or Into the Spider-Verse, which found fresh, exciting ways to tell culturally specific stories with animation. Another option would be to experiment with having characters from different Disney properties come together in a shared universe. Imagine the fun of seeing Aladdin and Jasmine team up with Rapunzel and Flynn Rider for a crossover adventure. The possibilities are endless. So consider this a call to action for Disney. To anyone with a say in the company's direction, you have such an incredible legacy, but you're squandering it. You're capable of so much more than empty cash grabs like Mufasa. Please, don't let it fade into a meaningless morass of recycled plots and photorealistic animals. Bring back the wonder, the creativity, the spark of life that only hand-drawn animation can provide. Show us something we've never seen before. Make us believe in movie magic again, because if you don't, who will?